Okay, guys, I'm going to jump in and do a handstand mess around, play with a little bit of different things, handstand push-ups, presses, planche, anything. Just if you jump on live, ask questions. I did do a planned one of this earlier that I had to cancel. So this is a bit of an ad hoc, half an hour. Let's have a play, see what happens. So I'm just going to warm my handstand up. Normal deal. Wrists, hands, shoulders. Make the body happy to handstand. Let's move you back a bit. Check you can see. So let's just see what we're dealing with straight away. So moving the scapula around, moving the shoulders around, seeing how the handstand feels. I've done no warm-up mobility-wise. Hey, how you doing? Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what you want me to do, demonstrate. I've got no plans training-wise today, so I've done planche yesterday, stool to press yesterday. Teach you planche. I trained planche yesterday, so it all depends. What level planche have you got? Can you do a tuck planche? How many days does it take to learn a handstand? It all depends on the individual, but I recommend a daily practice. And also, what is a handstand? So most people, like, the goalposts change when they're learning to handstand. So, is it a 2-second hold? Is it a 10-second hold in the middle of the room? Is it a minute handstand? Is it a one-arm handstand? So that changes dramatically. So basically, you just need to work out what level you are, do the drills around you, and then practice consistently. So that's the big one. It's really hard to give timelines because everyone's different as well. In terms of planche, if you want to learn planche, if you're not doing planche leans, you should be. It doesn't matter what level your planche is. Make sure you can get into full protraction. So making sure in the top position. So externally rotate the hands, take the hands wider, and be able to push up to this protracted round back position. So once you get that comfortable and you can make sure that your shoulder blades aren't showing in that position, then just taking the shoulders forward slightly in that position there and holding for time. And just do this every time you train as part of your warm-up, as part of your conditioning holds. And then when you are training planche, I recommend probably 4 times a week if you're serious about planche positions. And it's obviously working initially towards tuck planche. So being able to hold in that position, build that up to 20, 30 seconds. So that's how I train planche leans, and then planche holds. And straddle planche is just opening out. So I trained planche yesterday. I worked up to my straddle planche, and it's just building upon what you have. So tuck planche, open tuck, frog position, and then start with a high hip straddle planche, which is easier. So high hip straddle planche is going to have feet backwards still, but your hip is higher than it should be, like that type of position. And then from there, trying to open out into a flatter straddle position. So progressing to that position. But this position is very close to full planche, so very, very hard. So knowing how to make that slightly easier, like that, and then just find where you can hold 5 to 10 second holds, 10 to 15 sets, 4 times a week. Very, very simple. Planche is like handstand. Super simple in terms of programming. You just got to do the consistency of the basics over and over and over and over again. Stool to press to handstand. So stool to press, obviously you need a straddle press, a standard straddle press off the floor. So for stool to, we need to make sure that you can press off the floor Then you need to start playing with low hip, like planche press type positions and eccentrics. So now pressing when the hip is this height, pressing from like there, coming down lower with the hip, and then it's learning the straddle L-sit, and then learning the eccentrics through to there, and doing that really, really slowly. So building those foundations first, make sure you're doing the top, which is the handstand balance, make sure you're doing the eccentric, which is the straddle press, and then make sure you're doing the L-sit, straddle L-sit hold at the bottom. Yeah, gap between standing press to stalder is very big. So that's what you've got to try and work out is how do you make it closer to it without making the gap massive. So those lower hip positions are really good. Also, just doing a deficit press handstand. So if you have, you don't have to start this high, but if you have stools or weight plates or something to make it a deficit, so deficit meaning that my feet are lower than my hands. So now my hip is lower. So now if I try and press from here, it's much, much harder than pressing from here just because my feet are dangling below me. So a lower hip like a stalder press and then pressing from there. And that's where you can then play with coming down with your eccentric. And just start working those really, really slowly. Obviously, it's hard for me to give really detailed information when you don't have the information in front of you. So I don't know exactly where you're at and where your gaps are. Let's try and backtrack. Where we go? How to fall from handstand. Just practice. Like how to fail from handstand. I'm sure that's how to fall from handstand. So if you're learning to fall from a handstand, basically you want to kick up grass down the beach, just somewhere and build confidence of turning out of your position. You can mimic it against the wall. So just make sure that you've got enough space around you. Walk up the wall into a position you're comfortable with, like make this nice and strong, nice and conditioned there. And then you can step and practice cartwheeling and out with control. And then you can just try that on both sides. And then obviously just bring the hands in closer to the wall so you get closer to the real thing. And then just practice falling out. But if you're doing all your handstand drills to learn the handstand, you should slowly build all those gaps anyway with the falling. How to prevent handstand chest falling. I'm assuming, does that mean going underbalanced? So if it's underbalanced, so when the chest comes down towards the floor, like this position, so we need to get strong doing this type of thing. So you're underbalanced. So how you learn that is toe pulls. So this way around, and then pulling from the wall here and learning to do this type of movement. So that's probably one of the best exercises you can do. What are some good exercises for building oblique strength for side bends in the one-arm handstand? One-arm handstand side bends. That's the best exercise you can do. So I would just be hanging out in that position, make your straddle one segment really, really strong, and then just doing side bends. I would just do that. You can obviously play around with leg position. My side bends is terrible, even though I can one arm. So in that position, into your straddle and coming over to one side and holding in that position. You can bend this leg and try and pull into positions deeper, but just playing around with that on both sides while you're doing your one-arm drills. The cool thing with one arms is that you have to do thousands and thousands of repetitions. So when you're doing your thousands of repetitions, you're also doing a side bend, which means you're also training that. So your side bend is just naturally going to get deeper by doing one-arm handstand drills. Just be careful that you're not going sideways for your one-arm drills. So we don't want to be in straddle and moving this way for your one arm. We want to make sure we're moving down into the position. And that's the same with most of these skills, is try and train the thing by doing the thing. So don't try and come up with too many different drills or exercises that aren't actually the real thing. Obviously, if you can't do the thing yet, so like if you can't press handstands, you can't do press handstand as repetitions, but maybe you can do eccentrics, or maybe you can do a wall drill that mimics it very, very closely. What, Rosie? Rose's hair. She's hungry though. Teach me handstand walking. I'm not a big fan of teaching handstand walking. I prefer teaching people a static handstand first, and then you can handstand walk. I wouldn't train specifically for a handstand walk unless you're training for like a CrossFit competition or something. You've got a limited time. I would increase your time on your hands in a static position first. Get your underbalance and your overbalance really strong, which means your window of balance is really big, so you can move around in your handstand, and you will just be able to handstand walk. Like I've never trained handstand walk, but I can handstand walk because my handstand balance is so good. What are the best exercises for strengthening lower back muscles and hips? I would still like lower back and hips. I would still be deadlifting in some way. So I would make sure your deadlift is strong. I don't deadlift that often, but I do make sure that I don't lose strength. So that I don't think you can beat that for balance of the hips, glutes, hamstrings. You could do lunges and things like that. And then specifically for handstands, all of the straddle good morning type movements are really good. So even just like a standing straddle position. So this one I do probably daily. So in that straddle position, I definitely teach it in all my classes, and then taking the hip backwards, coming down towards the floor, and now using the hamstrings and the glutes to stand back up again. So being able to do repetitions of that, the straddle ups, this type of thing, the Cossack squats, those, do those regular enough in your training. And that's the sort of thing that I'd put in between my handstand sets. And I definitely program those type of mobility type exercises. So creating strength through your ranges of motion. Handstand push-ups, please. Again, with the handstand push-ups, it depends where you're at. But the same thing is with the press handstand. We just want to be working through slow eccentrics. We need to make sure we have the bottom position and the top position. So we need to make sure with a handstand push-up that we understand this position, so the bottom, and be able to hold in that position. We need to be able to get up through the pathway and understand the pathway on the concentric and also a slow eccentric. And we might need to do that to start with using pike push-up variations or chest to wall variations. But same thing, we want to fill all those gaps. So we're doing something for the bottom, something for the top of the handstand, and something for the pathway. In terms of, so getting lots of balance with the wall, floating away for 3 to 4 seconds at a time. Then when I go to try and freestand, my arms have a tendency to walk to try and regain balance. Yeah, so that's really common. So everyone will have like their go-to like habit on trying to balance. Like when you train dancers or gymnasts or something, they'll always back bend. If anyone's really flexible with their back bends, they'll tend to go in that direction. A yogi will use their hips a lot to rebalance. And then other people will tend to walk. So trying to stop that as much as possible by mimicking the freestanding and handstand, but close to the wall. So if you always walk forwards when you do a freestanding handstand balance, if I do it here, now I can't walk forwards because the wall's in the way. So I'm putting a block in the way to stop me from doing it. Or handstanding on a board or something. So if you use a handstand board, so if I use something like this, I now have a platform that I handstand on, and I'm less likely to walk off the platform. But if I'm just handstanding in the middle of the room, then I might tend to just spill out more. And also making sure that your wall drills, that you are actually practicing holds from the wall drills. So not just pulling from the wall. So if I can kick up to here pull from the wall and go back again, I also need to be practicing pulling away from the wall and just holding. So getting up to 10 plus seconds in this position and then going into your freestanding is probably going to really help you, because 2 to 3 seconds is really good balance, but realistically, it's not going to give you a long freestanding handstand hold. So still keep playing with that, but make sure you're doing enough against the wall to make sure that the time is being increased there first, and then carry it over to your freestanding. Can we do handstand with lack of hamstring flexibility? Yeah, definitely. So this is really, really important for everyone. You just need to be super realistic with where you are currently. So mobility is a massive one. So if my overhead mobility is fantastic, my biceps will be by my ears like that. In reality, when most people put their hands above their head, when the rest of their body is straight, they look like this. They actually can't put their hands together. So that means your handstand position should be like this and not like this. So if I try and put my hands together and I can't do it mobility-wise, I'm going to spill out. The same thing is if my hamstrings are tight when I want to do a handstand and I demand this when I try and kick up, it's not going to work because my body's going to spill out sideways and it's going to make the handstand really hard. So the person that can't touch their toes in this position can handstand, but it means their handstand is going to start like this. And they realistically have to push forwards first, use strength to hold the position. But if your hamstrings are super tight, your rest of your body is probably tight as well. So your handstand is going to be more like this and not like this yet. So we don't want to be trying to get into this position if we physically can't get into it. Or if you can physically get into it, it might be so demanding that you literally can't breathe in the position. So we want to be able to hold a conversation in the positions that you're trying to hold the handstand. If not, you're trying to go beyond your current level. And it doesn't mean you should try and improve all those things, because you should increase your flexibility and become more conditioned in those positions, but you need to give your body time to do it. Tuck jump. Okay, with tuck jumps, the easiest way to do it is more like a frog to start with. And we need to create a really strong base, the same as the kick-ups. So I'm going to have hands on the floor. I'm going to have my shoulders direct on top of my hands. My focal point is going to be fixed into the floor. So I'm there. And then with my legs, I'm going to actually have them apart a little bit there. And then when I drop the hip down, I'm going to keep the shoulder in place like that. And I'm going to bunny hop and see if I can get my hip on top of my shoulder and come back down again. And then I just build upon that until I can get up and then straighten my legs on top of my hips. So I create that handstand, and then I come back through the tuck, and then I can just start to clean that up. Now, if you need to, obviously do it back to wall, exactly the same thing, shoulder position, head position, jump the hip on top, feet on top of the hips, and then just slowly clean it up. If you need to, if you really struggle with it, do the eccentrics. So kick up and come down through the eccentric. Do I have rings? Yes, I have rings. They're there. So I use rings quite often. Skin the cat, muscle ups, dips, chins, etc. How to correct the moving forward of the shoulder in the kick up. My legs move up and my back arch. I have a good straight line in the chest to wall, so not mobility problem. So I would it might just be habit. So if you move your head into position close to the wall. So if I set my handstand up, check you can see me. So I set my handstand up here and put my shoulders on top of my hands. Now if I kick to handstand and my shoulders do go forwards, my head's going to hit the wall. So by putting the wall here and putting my hands here, I'm forcing myself now. If you do a little kick up and see what happens to the shoulders, try and build upon that and then up. So try and make it happen like that. So layer in and make sure that you're not flexing when you try and kick up. There's one thing going into a straight position and going, yes, I can hold that. It's another thing trying to hold the position with strength, then trying to lift your hands up or open the shoulders up into a handstand. So you might be using like muscling your kick up, which limits your range of motion. But the wall drill really helps because it punishes you if your head and shoulders goes forwards, your head's going to hit the floor, hit the wall. I have a hard time being able to kick up. So hand, shoulders. I've got lots of videos on the handstand kick up. So just progress through it slowly. Place your hands on the floor, shoulders on top of the hands. Pick your focal point, and then just try and touch the wall with one foot. So hands, shoulders, focal point. Try and touch the wall. If that feels okay, try and make that foot go higher until you're all the way up. Rosie's still crying because she wants her dinner. Tuck handstand push-ups, please. I'm not really sure what you mean by tuck handstand push-ups. You can do a handstand push-up in a tuck. I wouldn't recommend it because it makes you underbalance really heavily because your legs are in that position. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. Are bent arm presses on powerlets that much easier than from the floor? Can press up quite comfortably with powerlets, but feel such a big jump when it's from the floor. Yes, and it depends on the individual as well. So if you've trained a lot on P-bars, then when you go to the floor, it's going to feel really hard. Same thing if you train only on the floor, you literally can't balance on P-bars. So I'd recommend training both. So even if you find one harder, just work that quite a bit more, and then eventually you'll be able to do both. So I pick and choose. So some days I'll use bars, and sometimes I'll go on floor. That's the same with planche, presses, handstand push-ups, all the movements. I'd make sure you can do both. And stiff hips, if I can't affect the alignment of the handstand. Yeah, stiff hips, because with hips and shoulders, they'll talk to each other. So you could have good flexibility in your shoulders, but then if you try and open your hips up, it will affect your shoulder mobility and vice versa. So everything that's tight in the body will be compensated for somewhere else. So that's why it's good to try over time to increase mobility from head to toe, but just be realistic of the mobility you have in the moment and train with that. But just remember that if your flexibility is not so good, the skills that you're doing now are less efficient or harder. So as you improve your mobility, the skills are going to get easier. So a lot of people will like increase their handstand push-up repetitions or their press reps or just their handstand holds just by increasing their flexibility. Alan, I can do handstand push-up freestanding with full range of motion. Awesome, 1 to 3 reps, but it seems like I never get stronger, only heavier or lighter. So I would try and change the variation. Are you doing deficit, like to a box or something? Let me just get rid of the dog. She's driving me crazy. Come on, up. Up. 2 seconds, guys. I'm just going to get rid of Rosie. Okay, sorry guys, hungry dog. Yeah, so Alan, that's what I was saying. Are you training eccentrics? Is that just handstand push-ups on the floor? So eccentrics will make a massive, not eccentrics, sorry, deficit. So like to a box. So that will transform your handstand push-ups, and also you could just change the like the angle. So and try and do things like L sit to handstand. That still passes through the handstand push-up drill. You could do different variations like going towards eccentric 90-degree handstand push-ups. So basically just increase the demand in a different exercise. How can you lose the fear of falling back when trying to leave the wall in the chest wall handstand? Yeah, that's really, really common. It's just building more confidence and time there. I recommend you get someone to spot you. So if someone stands here when you're doing it, so then if you do come off the wall, that you'll touch them and then go back again. Also, purposely go over and try kicking out and turning out to one side. You can do the chest to wall drills this way around. So I can practice pulling from the wall and then taking the shoulders to the wall and the feet back and vice versa. So practicing that underbalance strength this way around. It's harder to get the technique right, but it stops you stressing about falling on your back. But the spotting version is really good. And then over time, it will go away. It's just doing it enough that builds confidence for you. And that's different for everyone. What do you think of the power ball for wrist pain? I've never used it. I know some people do. I've always just rode the like forearm mobility hanging. When I was doing loads of volume for my one arm handstand, I would alternate between blocks and the floor. And just sort of play around with hand positioning. A lot of the time, if you're tight somewhere else in the chain, so even in tight hips, can make you compensate more when you handstand balance in the wrist, and then your wrists become sore. So again, I would try and condition the handstand and the wrists using the handstand position, and not use other things, but you just need to go with what feels good for you. So I've had no experience using that. How to strengthen wrists. So they go hand in hand. So exactly the same. I just increase time in the hands. I'd be doing hanging, pulling, what was I going to say? Planche training, parallettes, floor training, time on your hands, and make sure mobility is there in the rest of the body. So that's such a big one. Like if you struggle to get your hands above your head and you've got decreased flexibility there, your wrists are going to take that load and it's going to play your wrists up. So I recommend that increase in mobility, especially upper back, thoracic, foam roller, and that is amazing the difference that will make to your wrists, and just slowly increase the volume on your hands. A lot of people train for too longer sessions and then don't repeat it enough. So I'd recommend shorter sessions, and that's what I've done with my app. So when I designed my app, I tried to do it so there was really short sessions with the idea that you can stack sessions. So you can do handstand balance, you can do press work, you can do handstand push-ups, combine them all together into a longer session, or you've just got these tiny blocks of handstand sessions, and then you can just do more of them. I believe like more of a daily practice is better than doing a 2-hour handstand session and then not training for 2 weeks. I think that's much better on the body. Just slowly condition it and back off when you need to, increase it when you feel good. Elbow lever press to handstand, please. So I would just do eccentrics for that. Obviously, you need an elbow lever, so you need a crock or something to be able to do that. Make sure that's really, really strong. Like I haven't warmed my crock up. I'll show you on my good side because I know I can do it on my good side. On here, make sure that's there. And I know I can balance that. And then lowering from handstand to that with 2 arms. But building the foundation first and making sure that you've got a press and a handstand push-up and a really strong elbow lever. So just make sure with any of these bigger skills, make sure that you've got the components that make it up. So to lower from a handstand to a crock, you need some bent arm strength, you need some straight arm strength, and you need some understanding of where the shoulders need to go and balance out where the feet are. Best tip for getting the first lift off. Again, you need to find out what your body position is. So where's your sweet spot? So in terms of the sweet spot, you need to make sure that you can get your hip crease on top of your hands. So if you're someone that's very, very flexible, we need to be this type of thing, yoga, forward fold level here. And now I might lift up there. But if my flexibility is not so good, my hands might be here and I might need to bend my arms a little bit, but now I can flow up. So finding out your sweet spot in terms of the distance your hands are apart, the distance your feet are away from your hands, So just find your sweet spot and how close you can get it. Film from the side, so video yourself from the side, and look where that hip crease is relevant to the hands, and make sure that the hip crease is getting closer and closer to it. And then you should be able to float at some point when you've conditioned your upper back, shoulders, and positioning enough. I have a problem in press handstand. Yeah, press handstand is a biggie. Just find your gaps though. So a really slow eccentric will normally find your gaps. That will assess where your gaps are. So anywhere through the eccentric, if you drop, then that's where you need to fill that gap with time under tension and training. L-sit to handstand, please. You're picking all the big exercises and asking how to do it. So exactly the same thing as the stool to press. So you need to either choose a bent arm entry or a straight arm entry for L-sit to handstand. And then eccentrically go down it, make sure that you've got all the components. So if it's a bent arm one, you need a handstand push up. If it's a straight arm one, you need a press handstand. And then you need the transition from the L-sit, the standing position through to the L-sit. If you watch my YouTube video I put up this morning, I trained planche and stool to press and L-sit positions and moving between them. So that will give you some ideas on there. How much time did it take to learn handstand balance? I covered that earlier in the video. It's just different for everyone, but just train consistently. The goalposts of what a handstand balance is will change as well. So, you know, some people say 10 seconds in the middle of the room. Some people say 60 seconds in the middle of the room. Some people say one arm handstand in the middle of the room. So it's all depending on you. Just find a good program to follow, 3 or 4 exercises, and do it consistently. Body falls from press position, how to hold at press position. Conditioning that position that I just showed, the hip on top of the hands, up onto tiptoes, as much weight into the upper back and shoulders as you can. Sometimes my handstand balance and sometimes I fall forward and backwards. Yeah, so that's the handstand window of balance. We need to make your window of balance this big so you can move around inside of it. So that's working heel pulls and toe pulls against the wall. So if I'm in a handstand, I should be able to hold if I go this way to underbalance and I go this way to overbalance and everything in between. That way I can move around and I'm not going to fall out of the handstand. So I learned that by pulling from the wall, not kicking from the wall, and then doing the same on this side, pulling the toes off, using the chest to wall position and coming off the wall, learning to balance there. And that's how I make that window of balance. So learning those 2 drills will give you a freestanding handstand. It will just take 6-9 months to get good at those drills. And then you'll keep refining them for like 18 months. Yeah, when I practice balance with chest to wall handstand, I can bring shoulders forward, but can't make my legs leave the wall. Is it because I lose my alignment? Yeah, normally because you sag back against the wall. So what you need to do is be more positive as you come off the wall and not sag down. Guys, I'm going to have to go in a second. My dinner's going to be ready. So here, what we don't want to do is this. I can't come off the wall now. I need to be positive. So this way, and I can come off the wall. But most people will do this if they're a bit nervous or scared, because this is safe and that is scary. So we tend to pull back towards the wall. So I want progression from you. Can you guide me? What? Guys, I've got an app with lots of programs and stuff. So the easiest way to get programs, videos and stuff for what I do is on there. Or I've got hundreds of videos now on YouTube, so loads of free content. So if you do want coaching, pick one of those 2. Guys, I am going to have to switch off. So I'll just do a couple more questions. Can you show difference between handstand push-up and arch back and not arch back? What's the strength gap between them? So normally when we're learning handstand push-up, you'll drop into extension and your chest will face the floor. Now we're stronger to push there, so our body's happier to go there. But it does mean that when you come down on your handstand push-up, it's going to look more like this. And then when you push up, your body's collapsing as you go up, which makes it harder unless you know where to put your body. So at least I can do that and talk. is I know where to position my body to make it easier. So even though I'm showing my body collapsing, I'm actually still peeling myself out of the handstand. So most people, when they do that, they'll actually collapse and fall down as opposed to help themselves out. So I'm being a little bit clever with my positioning just from practice and repetitions. So ideally, or the better way is seen by keeping more of a straight body position, flexed position like that when we do our handstand push-ups. But it's harder to lock that position in and not go to extension when we're trying to use our muscles to get out. They tend to go into extension. I just want to know, like we lift our body for high tuck planche, how to do that perfectly and apply it in press handstand. I mean, if you can do a high tuck planche, you should be able to do a press handstand, because it's the same thing. So it's just making sure that your hip gets on top, and you need to extend your legs and try and push your hips on top of your hands. Can you do a handstand on powerlets? Yes. Yeah, powerlets is a big part of my training. So you can see I've got powerlets all there. I use them with all my exercises. So I do it on the floor and back. Sir, can you perform a 90-degree handstand? What is that covered up? Handstand push-up. I can try. I'm not warmed up, but I can try and do a 90-degree. Guys, so this will be the last thing that I do, but drop any questions down, and I can look back later, and I'm going to do these, try and do these once a week, the lives at least. Let me see if I can get 90. So a little bit of an arch there, but that's 90-degree handstand push-up. Okay, guys, I'm going to have to disappear now. I've gone 7 minutes over. But do check out, if you've got more questions, a lot of the similar questions are coming up. Check out my YouTube videos. There's all free on there, and there's lots of tutorials that should answer majority of these questions. I put handstand balance, handstand push-ups, press, and planche up the most. So just go through my recent videos, and there'll be lots on there. If you're after coaching in any way, I have my app. Or if you want more in-depth assessment and stuff, online coaching via the website. So I will be back on again next week sometime live, but reach out on any of my videos, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks, guys.